I was planning on doing a video mainly on the Gospels. However, with starting that, I've started to notice a bunch of things about Gospel prophecies that I really need to say in a separate video before I make the other one. Now, prophecies in general follow certain patterns, not just prophecies in the Gospels or in the Bible, but prophecies in Greek mythology or mythologies from all over the planet. Usually prophecies are very vague or very metaphorical, making them open to interpretation. Another thing that sometimes happens is that some groups will put out many prophecies and only some of them will come true by sheer luck. And in other cases, some mythologies actually have prophecies that nobody knows if the prophecy was made before the events that took place. Sometimes it's believed that the prophecy actually was invented to make the mythology look more mythic. Here's some basic examples of the common patterns that prophecies tend to follow. So for the first example, if I were to say that a war is going to be fought exactly 100 years from now, then if a war is being fought, then it might appear that I was a prophet and I could see the future. However, if you were to actually examine this prophecy, it's incredibly vague, being that it's incredibly difficult to find a time in history when a war was not being fought somewhere on the planet. Another example is the Nostradamus prophecies, because they are so metaphorical and so open to interpretation. You can pull out almost any meaning for these prophecies for almost any situation. Another notable example is in the Iliad, where Achilles is told that he'll die if he goes to Troy to fight. Now, it's unknown if this prophecy was actually made at all, let alone before the events happened, or if it was made to give the appearance that the tale is more divinely inspired or something to that effect. So with all this said, let's examine some gospel prophecies to see what we find. For one example, in the Gospel of John chapter 19 verses 22 and 23, the soldiers at the crucifixion are dividing up Jesus' clothing amongst themselves. This is cited by the Gospel of John as the fulfillment of a prophecy. Now, the nice thing about some Bible sites is that they'll actually show you the prophecy being cited where it is in the Old Testament. So, here's the actual Old Testament scripture. In this case, the prophecy is cited as Psalm chapter 22, verse 18. Now, I don't see any reason to believe, while reading this without reference to the Gospels, that this particular verse is meant to be a prophecy by the one who wrote it. Even if I'm wrong, even if there's somewhere that says that I missed that this is meant to be a prophecy, then Psalm chapter 22 verse 18 is no more a prophecy than Psalm 22 verse 12, which says bulls have surrounded me, which doesn't happen anywhere in the Gospels. Nor does Psalm 22:13, which talks about lions, again not mentioned in the Gospels. The same thing goes for many of the verses in this chapter. However, I can already hear the fundamentalists crying, "Oh well, those verses are metaphorical." However, these verses are given in the same context as Psalm 22:18, which is supposed to be a fulfilled prophecy. So, if these two verses are metaphorical, then we should also believe that Psalm 22:18 is also metaphorical and not a prophecy. Another one, this is also related to the crucifixion, is that none of his bones will be broken. This cited as Psalm chapter 34 verse 20. But if we actually look at the verse, it says, "He protects all his bones, not one of them will be broken." The gospel writer conveniently leaves out the part that says he protects all his bones, being that it's impossible for Jesus to do so because he's crucified. Looking at this even further, if you read this entire chapter, you'll notice that it's about Yahweh protecting the righteous. However, Yahweh did nothing to save Jesus from being crucified or anything of the like. And to this day even, Yahweh doesn't do a thing to help the righteous that we can detect. So, this entire chapter, if taken as a prophecy, is completely unfulfilled. Another prophecy says that Jesus is to ride into a city on a donkey. This story is mentioned in the Gospel of Matt, Mark, and Luke, although with contradictory accounts. However, we again run into the same problem. Chapter 9, verse 9 of Zechariah is no more prophecy than verse 8, which says, "But I will defend my house against marauding forces. Never again will an oppressor overrun my people, for now I am keeping watch." This is funny because the entire time period in which Jesus lived, the Jews were being controlled by the Romans. This entire time period stands to the fact that this prophecy is not fulfilled. And remember, it is given in the same context as a prophecy that supposedly is fulfilled. So as we can see, this intense picking and choosing of prophecies is a recurring theme. You may be wondering how much picking and choosing they've done. So let's look at how many books contain prophecies that are cited by the Gospels. Malachians has 4 chapters, Daniel has 12 chapters, Hosea has 14 chapters, Zechariah has 14 chapters, Jeremiah has 52 chapters, Isaiah has 66 chapters, and Psalms has 150 chapters. In those few books alone, there are 326 chapters of material that gospel writers could pick and choose from for their supposedly fulfilled prophecies. And on top of all that, I can almost guarantee you that I missed some of them. I'm not sure about you guys, but I think that's a lot of room for picking and choosing. Now, if you want to know for sure why Jesus does not qualify as the Jewish Messiah, then the easiest thing to do would probably be to just ask a Jewish source. In fact, when you compare Jesus' life to the actual prophecies that the Jews expect out of their Messiah, suddenly Jesus no longer seems to be the Jewish Messiah.